So today the topic is God, personal and impersonal. But before going into that, I just wanted to say about this weekend, other things this weekend. Tomorrow, for anyone, those interested, I'll be doing a presentation, and hopefully with questions and comments from those who would like to give them up in Papa's house on Tiffin Lectures, which was published late last year, and it was, the book is right on the shelves there, and it was the product of 20 years of work, actually. We started in 1997. It's an edition of Baba's words. It presents itself as such, of talks Baba gave to them in Mandalay in 1926-27. So it's like, it seems to me very clearly to be about the spiritual training Baba was giving to his men Mandalay. I mean, in the intellectual, the understanding, Gyan aspect of things. And Baba was explaining all sorts of topics. It's not like Infinite Intelligence, which is a very intense and rather difficult treatise, I would say, Baba, which I think Baba presented as a series of dictations. It's not like that. It's whatever the topic of the day was, and I think they're generally quite accessible. I find them to be so. I mean, of course, I may not be the most objective reader of it, but they're, Baba wasn't being highly theoretical. He was talking on things, it seems to me, that he wanted them to understand as his mandala. So there'll be a little bit on the background, the history of the period, and something from the Tiffin Lectures, and then something about, towards the end, about Baba's words. Attend at 12:02 to 4, so of course everyone is cordially welcome, naturally. And on Friday, I also wanted to mention that several of us are at 10 at coffee are going to just be sharing, and you would be welcome to come and do this too. Just share something that we'd like to share, like a poem or a song or some passage or something that, Sunday, yeah. Did I say Saturday?
Friday.
Oh, Saturday. Sunday, and for about an hour. And at 11, I'm going to do a practice of some songs for people who would like to burst into song like John Perry, who I know will be beating it all.
Really? I've been practicing all week.
Yeah.
Is that why you're losing your voice?
So you thought you'd come for chorus singing, but you'll be so enchanted by this nightingale that you'll just sit in stunned silence. And at some of the heights of some of his arias, he might whip out a brush and do a dual medium presentation.
Well, perhaps at the end of this we could have a little sample of the singing. John might like to give us a...
I don't know. Are you prepared to put an advanced preview today, or?
Enough.
You're going to leave early, right? You're going to leave early.
Okay. So here is the topic today. I can't see very well, but I can see here. Let me read this out. All of the great religious traditions have had to deal, by religious I mean religious, spiritual, perennial traditions, whatever you want to call that, have had to deal in one way or another with the personal and impersonal aspects of God. Personal God displays human characteristics and can be more easily understood and approached by ordinary people through their normal human modalities. Impersonal God, by contrast, ultimately defies all understanding and imagination and characterization. God's, Meher Baba's darshana, remember I'm using that word instead of philosophy, because philosophy is just not a suitable word, strongly affirms both aspects. God is the impersonal infinite ocean, and God is the very human yet divine beloved. In this session, we will explore this question both in Meher Baba's writings and in some of the world's great spiritual traditions. So I've never been involved in a session on this topic before, so I'm sort of working my own, unpacking it a lot. So please chime in as you may feel so inclined. I've thought about it a great deal, though. And for some Baba lovers might say, well, Meher Baba is all that I care about. The impersonal aspect of God is of no interest to me. Fine, that's totally fine. I mean, I'm too rooted in Meher Baba, the man who I take to be God, and when it comes down to it, I don't even think about that. It's just...
You don't mind if we go there?
Yeah. So if anyone just wants to say, I don't care about the impersonal, that's fine. So you could just walk out now if you'd like. But I wanted to say this, that I do think that probably for most Baba lovers, actually they do have an implicit recognition of an impersonal dimension to Meher Baba that's part of their understanding of things, whether they think of it that way or not, and of God too. So here's an example of that kind of thing. I'll talk about Meher Baba. We take Meher Baba to be merciful, God to be merciful, right? God is, I think most people, that's one of the foremost attributes of God in Islam and Christianity, Buddhism, where they don't have God there. And yet at the same time, let's take a historical episode like the Holocaust in World War II, or they call it the Holodomor, Stalin's extermination, 5 to 10 million Ukrainians in 1930. If God is merciful, we would have to come to the conclusion, I should think, that is ultimately an expression of God's mercy. Well, how can that be? Then God's mercy is actually not what we would ordinarily think about that in our normal human terms. Or there are a lot of things about Baba himself, like I'll read a little bit of this. It's a mild example, but this, I'm sure you know many episodes where Baba seemed to act so irrationally and so harshly that if you're going to say, this is my beloved because he is love and sweetness and beauty and mercy, well, how do you actually integrate these elements into it? Okay, from southern Bombay, the party came to Pune and directly took to the Madras and southern Maharashtra Railway, etc. However, Vajifdar, he's one of the early Mandali, the famous Indian cricket player, fell ill. By the time they reached Landa, the junction station, he was completely laid up with fever. Now look at how our merciful beloved treated him. Baba became very angry at Vajifdar on some pretext and subjected him to a great onslaught of his usual nig-nagging. In this diary, we've seen this again and again and again. He would tear his mandali to pieces. And the guy was really, really sick. Is this love? He was left on the Landa station platform with Masaji to look after him. Baramji was set to get fresh milk from him, while Baba personally went out with Gustaji to get food. Baba and Gustaji found a somewhat tolerable Hindu hotel about a furlong away from the station, etc. After giving the milk procured by Baramji to Vajifdar, the party proceeded with their journey. Baba's nig-nagging brought about an unexpected change in Vajifdar's health. Instead of aggravating his condition, the mental harassment made him quite all right within a few hours. So now, this is not what we would normally think of as how to show kindness and love and mercy to someone, is it? And yet, the Mandali saw the result of it, So God's mercy has an aspect that goes, I won't say this is quite the impersonal aspect of God, but it goes beyond the personal as we ordinarily think of it. Isn't that true? I mean, if somebody, one of us treated a sick person this way, wouldn't you say, come on, cut it out. He's sick, leave him alone. Wouldn't that be normal? And yet Baba's personality had traits that subvert our usual understanding of this. And I think that most of us have assimilated a basic understanding of this. Isn't that true? That Baba does all sorts of things that we just can't understand in human terms. And we take that to be because he is God, right? He's actually God in human form. So we do have a register of awareness of something beyond the normal personal understanding of things. I'm just trying to illustrate why I think it is a part of our culture, actually, and for most of us, a part of understanding the impersonal aspect, or something moving beyond the personal in the usual way in our dealings with God. Now, I'm actually going to be talking about, okay, I'll give you another example. This is all Peter Nardine and I are editing this. So here's how, okay, these are Baba's mandalay, and a lot of them were Zoroastrians, and their home community was savaging Baba at this time, and Maharaj too. They're saying, why is Meher Baba, we don't have masters or gurus in our community. This is not part of Zoroastrianism. And look at this, he's with this Hindu to begin with, and what a Hindu. The guy is like naked, he behaves in every kind of crazy way. You know, so their home communities were absolutely savaging Baba, whom they were following, right? Just imagine, these are young men supposed to be building a career, supposed to be getting married, having a family, all of this stuff, and they're not doing that. So what does Baba do? Okay, so now this is preparations are beginning immediately. Turning some discussions that afternoon, referring to divine pride, Baba said, I must suffer a fall in my bhavapana, my babaship. What have you gained by being with me during these years? It is for this, it means to say you gain nothing. It is for this reason that now I want to meet sadhus in order to be kicked, rebuked, and abused by them. It is the longing from the very depth of my heart that when I put my head on a sant's feet for the namaskar, he may kick my head. I am going to bring about moksha, meaning circumstance, of such a kind. And here he prayed, Baba's praying to Khuda, to God. O Khuda, if I were to be kicked, then I will improve. And whatever I myself may achieve, that which you people too may be achieved, because you have seen what I have been able to do for you in these 2 years, connoting that Baba has not been able to do anything for them in these 2 years. Secondly, you people have given me babaship which I want to break, because I myself have realized that I have nothing, meaning nothing special, extraordinary, divine, etc., in me. Hence, in this manner, I'm deriving benefit of the darshan of sadhus and saints. And if in the process I come across a real one, I will live there with him for good. I'm not going to return. So look at this. These are the people, this is just what their communities are saying. And now Baba's saying it, How utterly confusing and mind-boggling this must have been to go through this, at this sort of time. So here we're dealing with a person who's got aspects to him that radically challenge everything we would ordinarily attribute to a person. It's not. So what I mean to say is that Baba had the transcendental divine aspect to him that goes beyond the personal, was always envisioning. One last episode, I remember that, who told me this? Was it Merwan or was it Mani who talked about it? Baba would be playing marbles, right? And he'd be lining up a shot, and he'd look at it this way and look at it that way, and everybody was watching him, and then he'd say, don't forget that I'm God, right? So there's this aspect to him that goes entirely beyond the current human situation that was always a part of who he was and what his work is. Francis gives a really, okay, let me give it, here are some, in brief, characterization of what these two aspects would be. Let me see, where did I put it? Yeah, this might be an illustration of the personal approach to God. Does somebody want to read this out? This is from the Everything and the Nothing. Can you read it?
Okay. A man loves a woman who's living in a distant place. His love causes him to be thinking of her all the time. And he cannot eat, he cannot sleep. His thoughts are only on his separation from her, and he continually longs for her. When this longing becomes too great, he either goes to her, or he compels her to come to him. This is called ishki mijazi, or physical love. To love God, one should think of God, long for God, and suffer the fire of separation, until one's longing reaches its utmost limits, and God the Beloved comes to the lover, and his thirst is quenched in union with God. This love is called ish-ich-hakiki, and is a gift from God. But one who obeys the Master, who is one with God, need not suffer these things, for in obedience is the grace of the Master.
So we're seeing here love for God expressed in very personal terms, being explicitly compared to love for a woman. And there's lots of passages in this book, The Everything and the Nothing, like this. Now this would be an example of the opposite of this. Let's see, from In God Speaks, here you see the impersonal being shown. I'll just read a little bit of this from down here. For example, let us imagine, so he's talking about the relation between the soul and the oversoul, between the individual and God. For example, let us imagine an unlimited ocean. Let us also imagine that we separate or take out one iota of the ocean from the limitless expanse of this unlimited ocean. It then follows that this iota of ocean, while in the limitless ocean, before separation, is ocean itself, and is not there in the shoreless ocean as an iota of the ocean, because every iota of ocean, when limited by the limitations of a drop, is unlimited ocean. Okay, this is our relation to God. We're the iota, and He's the ocean. So you can see there the impersonal presentation of God. And interestingly, God Speaks, which it seems to me clearly, I mean, I would call it Baba's most important book, all things considered, is all about the impersonal aspect of God. There's very little about the personal aspect of God at all. So you have this this disparity right within Baba's own presentation. When he talked to his lovers, it was rarely about this. It was usually about the beloved, about the personal aspect. But when he presented things in terms of philosophically, so to speak, he would come to this many times. Now, here is something where Francis, I think, really has a splendid presentation of this very idea. Let's see. Gee, I got everything in order, and now it's out of order. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Now this is from the East-West Gathering. Have you read the East-West Gathering?
We make it larger again.
I
Oh,
can
no,
make
you
this a
can't?
little
Yeah,
bit larger.
okay.
I know. I can do. this much. Oops. Like that. I
That's
can do
great.
that
Yeah,
much,
that's
which is a
good.
little better.
Thanks.
I wish I could expand more. But Francis has been talking about Baba's announcement of the East-West gathering where his lovers were going to be invited, and then all the excitement of everybody. Oh, did you hear that? Did you hear that? I have to buy a brand new hat. It starts to go. So when I see Baba, I can have my brand new hat. It's this the sort of babbling excitement among his lovers in Australia. He's has that focus, and then they come. Now he talks about when they arrive there, and here it's really an amazing presentation of their coming into God's presence. Here they are, the 30 birds of a tar story who come to the Sea Org, and they come into the presence of the God-man. And here's how Baba puts it. And you want to read a little bit?
In Attar's story,
You jump down below. They had set up for the Garden of Love.
they set out for the Garden of Love, but they found they had arrived at the seashore. They had come to admire the road, but they found themselves gazing at the illimitable ocean.
Right? You see the two aspects are right there. And you're going to be familiar with one of them. Keep going.
In the depths of the ocean is a pearl. Will you, bold swimmer, bring it in your hand? It is yours by right of heritage, the pearl of kingship over all the land. Do you remember? Do you understand?
Jeff, do you feel like being soul, and John, you could be heart in the next? Would you like to do that?
The soul exalted.
With you, Ocean, I belong. But the heart replied,
Why do you long for death? The soul said,
I will set sail. The heart inquired,
Where is your seaworthy ship? The soul said,
I will buy one. The heart asked,
What will you use for money? The soul said,
the price of all my other desires. The heart cautioned,
Have you studied navigation? The soul replied,
better to be shipwrecked and drowned in one's own element than to remain land-rooted forever. The heart said,
Have it your own way. But you go alone. I know where my comfort is.
Isn't that a superb presentation of this issue? Just wonderful. He keeps going on this, actually. Yeah, now we have, maybe we won't read all of this out, but you're probably familiar with some of these songs. Now he's talking about the ocean of the transcendent, impersonal God whom the soul seeks to unite with. The ocean, level and unending. The wave curls up, threatening, extending. Before the wave, the swirl of bubbles, and bubbles is but toils and troubles. You search the infinite ocean of God, and you're in for toils and troubles. Okay, John, you want to do this? Maybe Jeff could take us in on the beloved.
After giving them a glimpse of the ocean, God-man, in his kindness, brought them up from the seashore, and they sat down in the shadow of his feet, and he sang his bright love into their hearts.
my beloved is that one who by his singing created the suns and the earths, and this earth for men, the thunder and the storm, and the pounding surf, are but faint, distracted echoes of his song. Yet his voice is so soft, it scarcely disturbs the reeds of his lovers' hearts. He lets them sleep along the banks of the river of love until it is morning. The night is his wakefulness, but the morning will be his time of rest. He sends us forth out of Eden, wrapped in the seamless garment of his song. He told us to earn the bread of singing in the sweat of our faces, and to cultivate the vine of melody with our two hands. A lifetime of labour would produce one phrase, and many lives would make a complete song. The shadow of his feet is the field of the sky, on which he has left the sickle of the moon to remind us of the time of reaping. The shadow of his feet, cool and pleasant. But so is the shade of the mill house, where the wheat is taken for grinding. He's warned us that many songs do not make one song, and that the journey of stone is to dust.
So that's how he actually begins the tale of the gathering. I think it's a stunning approach that everyone comes to say, oh, I want to see Baba. And he gives them a glimpse of that ocean which is completely beyond anything that they had imagined, but then brings the beloved back to them. So that we see right there, I have a hard time thinking of a better short presentation of this issue of the personal and the impersonal aspects of Meher Baba. Here are some other, I just want to bring up two other passages from Francis where you would see these. Now this is from Stay with God, and this is the original state of God, which is impersonal and transcendent. Once God, that great being, whose nature, whose existence, knowledge, and bliss, slept. He was like a man in deep sleep who is, but does not know that he is. He had no knowledge of his knowledge, nor experience of his bliss. He was like a still, shoreless ocean, which no wind or wave moved upon. There was nothing but him. There were no stars, nor sun, nor earth, nor anything. All things were within him, but since he slept, they also were asleep, unformed and unmanifest. That's the formless God. By the way, I put up some of the words here. Nirakar, the top thing, N-I-R-A-K-A-R. You'll see these in God Speaks and Infinite Intelligence and other places. Akar means form, and Nir means without. That's the formless Nirakar God. La Surat is the Sufi term. La means without, and Surat means form. La Surat. All knowledge of himself and of all things were in him, but he did not know that he knew. And then Francis goes on to the surging of the whim and the rest of the story of the divine theme here. Here is the other side, the personal. Just read. Would somebody like to read just the first stanza here? This is the singing to the personal beloved, complaining to the personal beloved.
Moonlight breaks against my grief of stubborn days. The world awakes, each thing to sing your praise. And I alone stir not, as though it still were night. As a dull stone, though sun shines, gives no light. Meher, Meher, all things reflect your face so fair. In each that sings, you of yourself are aware. But though I see your winning beauty everywhere, unless you give me love, what is all this to me?
So this is completely the personal beloved, my beloved. You love everyone else and you don't love me. I'm the only one in this whole world you don't love. Right? Haven't we all felt that way sometimes? This is certainly not that infinite ocean anymore.
He visits that idea in the ghazals as well.
Mm-hmm.
One kind of ghazal that always struck me is ghazals are praise and complaint. See, he praises and then he starts to complain and he gets to a bit where with everything I've done for you, beloved, you look at me askance and you indicate to me that to cross this chasm I should fill it with tears and swim across.
Yeah. That kind of love expression recalls for a personal beloved and a personal face to God. And in general, the love theme works better within duality. This is another idea that I will bring into this, not just personal and impersonal, but also dualism and non-dualism. It's a separate topic, but they do kind of converge here. That infinite ocean is non-dual, right? God simply is. There is ultimately the separation between the iota and the ocean is completely imaginary, right? But if there is no separation between me and God, how do I love God? There's no scope for love given. So that's one of the problems with non-dualism. Actually, we'll get this later, but in the history of Vedanta, the great Adi Shankara propounded the idea that Brahman alone is. Atman and Brahman, the soul and God, are one and the same. But there emerged a reaction against him over several centuries by people who wanted scope for bhakti, for love for God. It's like, how do I love God if I am God? I want God to be separate from me so that I can love God. So this is part of the tension there between, there's a legitimate place for dualism too, for God and I are separate, so that I can have scope to love God. What do? Walk around with a mirror and say, oh, I love you so much. If I am God. We had a play at Abode where one of our characters did that. As a matter of fact, it was quite funny. Dana Ferry. But she had an excuse. She was the ninth state of God, so she could do it. But there's something, okay, we'll come into that more. So there's really, it seems to me that in terms of the ultimate truth of things, the impersonal and non-dual is the higher truth. That God alone exists. That I and you are not we but one, as Mirababa said. That the drop is the ocean. That is true in our origins. At the beginningless beginning, that's where we were, if we accept what Baba says about this. We began that way. We actually really are that way. And when we realize God, we'll merge into the eighth state of God, which I think I have here somewhere. Yeah, it is. That's right up in the corner there. I don't have a pointer. I tried to buy a laser. Here, I can do this. I tried to buy a laser pointer at Officeworks, and we don't have them. The buggers. Let's see. Here we go. There's the eighth state of God. You see that? So at the end of our journey, except for those of you who are going to become perfect masters, but even if you become a perfect master, after dropping your body in your fourth journey, you return to that anyway. That's our destiny, is to become the ocean. And the ocean is actually impersonal, as we've been seeing images of it. The wave threatening, extending, this, Francis's poem on that. In the depths of the ocean is a pearl. When you find the pearl, you merge in the ocean, and you no longer have any relationship to human things. That's the higher truth ultimately. But here's the other side to it. The personal is where we are. We actually experience ourselves as persons. And we experience God as someone we seek. And when God presents himself personally, we can relate to God. But God is an impersonal, infinite ocean, is actually unapproachable. You know, one thing about the infinite ocean image, it's not quite, no image will do it, and it's not quite accurate in the sense when I think of an ocean, I think of myself, and there's this dark ocean that goes on and on and on and on and on, right? Isn't that kind of like your image too, something like that? But actually that ocean has no space. And actually in that ocean, I'm not there. I'm not someone looking at it. So there's no getting into it. There's no shore. There's no admission into that ocean. So it's not a friendly aspect to God at all for ordinary people. What people want is someone to whom you can relate. So in that sense, the personal aspect of God is much more popular. And in all the religions, people want a personalizing side to things, which is the primary mode of relationship. Even though ultimately it's not true, even though ultimately you merge into the infinite divine oneness. So I think this fundamental tension is there in every great spiritual path that I can think of. It has to be there.
Would it all be part of the truth?
Yeah, well, in a way there are levels of truth. And in the highest truth, with a capital T, there's no I and you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That dichotomy is gone. There's no time. Time is gone. Space is gone. All differentiation is gone. And there's no scope for personality or any of that, because I am everything. I simply am. It's unimaginable and unknowable and unapproachable. There's this idea is well understood among students of religion. When do they talk about? These are some big terms, I know, but they're cataphatic and apophatic approaches to God. Have you heard those terms? I know some of you might have, but cataphatic apophatic means God is unknowable and unapproachable. And the only way that you can ever characterize by God is saying God is not this and not that, neti neti. God has no form. God has no attribute. God, you can cut away everything. The cataphatic is approaching God through likenesses. God is merciful. God is beautiful. God is like this. God is like the sun. God is majestic like a lion. God reaches out his hands to us and pulls us out of the mire like that. And in the Quran, which is very, emphasizing the transcendental aspect of God, one of the things they had to deal with was that God is characterized as being, having hands and feet, when clearly he does not. So these are two fundamental approaches to God that all of the great religions that I know of, all right, I'll say a number of them anyway, have really understood well and explored, and that I think are a part of our picture too.
In the library, there's a book by Michael Sells, which the apophatic, that all mystics have had.
Yeah.
And he goes, through various mystics, chapter by chapter, to show all the tricks you have to play with language to pretend to be able to say something about something that nothing can be said about.
Yeah. Completely incomprehensible. Like in the Christian world, okay, Dionysius is a famous founder of an apophatic approach. In Islam, they had it too. And yet, if you deny all characterizations of God, where do you leave people? Where do they start? And Meher Baba was supremely personable, you know. How did you sleep? How do I look? You know, things like that. He engaged people in a highly personal way. So it seems to me that all of the great spiritual paths have to find a way of integrating both of these. They have to have the personal, because we're relational beings. We have to be relational beings because we experience subject and object, right? Even if you're sort of a misanthrope, don't like people, and you're still gonna, be sitting in your room thinking about all those people you don't like so much. They're the objects of your dislike. Or you're gonna have, you have to go to the bathroom, you have to say, I am in this place and the bathroom is there. You can't help but have a relational orientation towards the universe. And yet, any personalization of God has to get undercut and subverted at some point. That's why when you're with Baba, no matter what approach you take to him, it's not going to work. He'll be all love at first. Oh, Eve, you're the most wonderful person. Oh, you have this wonderful quality, that one. Oh, Di, you're the most wonderful lover that a beloved could ever have. Well, that'll last about a week. Right. And they all experience that. And then it's like, you're the worst disciple that ever there was. No matter what you do, it's always bad. Because you have to go beyond duality. And the whole foundation of the personal has to be, the mind, the ego has to be annihilated. That's it there. So both of these have to be a part of the picture, I think, in any valid spiritual path. But on the other hand, you have to sort of keep the person, keep the connection. The beloved has to keep the connection with the lover too. That also has to be there. And there's one other aspect to this. Okay, I'll come to that. Here are some of the, looking a little more deeply into what the personal means and the impersonal means. As to the impersonal aspect of God, they always say God cannot be understood. And here's a way of understanding that. All of our consciousness, would you not agree with this, is dual. That is to say, all of our awareness happens within a context where there's subject and object and a means of knowing it. Like, I always am convinced there's a me here. Right now I attach the name Ward to it. Last lifetime I attached another name to it. And there are objects out there. There's Steve sitting there with his hands in the air, praising the Lord like that. There's Jenny there and sitting near the wall and so forth. And there's means of knowing. There's seeing, there's hearing, you can think of an idea, it can be an object like that. All of our consciousness is dual, right? Isn't that true? From the moment you wake up, there's me and there are objects of my experience. God is non-dual. So the moment you make God into an object of thought, it's not God anymore, because God is not an object. God is divine simplicity. So we can't even think about God. Baba says you can't seek God. Well, you can't, because as soon as you seek God, you turn God into an object, and God is not that. So God, in that sense, is completely unapproachable, completely unthinkable, completely unimaginable, completely transcendent. And there's no way that we can overcome that problem. So that's the impersonal and non-dual aspect of God. So some of the words that, see, these things are well understood by some of the great figures of the spiritual traditions. Like Nirakar means without form. Nirgun means without attributes. Ultimately, God is formless. Ultimately, God, you cannot attribute anything. Like, let's suppose I attribute mercy to God, right? Well, how about Hitler and Stalin? How do you buy that as mercy? Or God is beautiful. Well, how about the supremely ugly spectacles of the world? Those are God too, aren't they? So God actually, in this aspect, has no attributes and has no form. This is the impersonal side. The other side is Sakar and Sagun, or Basurat and Basifat. By the way, you can find all these terms, since I know you're just dying to do so, but I just want to be making the point that this is right here in Baba's own stuff. In these charts, you'll see a lot of these terms are right there. The attributeless and the with attributes, the formless and the formful, all those things. And he gives the Sufi and Vedantic terms for all of it. So in the personal aspect, so now let's look at some of the sides of the dimensions of this personal side of God. Two big ones come to my mind as indicated in those terms. Personal God relates to us. Okay, fundamentally personal God is personal because he relates to persons and thus exhibits personal characteristics one way or another. One way in which God could do so is through form, and another way in which God could do so is through attributes. So, how about our Meher Baba in the formful aspect? How is Baba formful? Well, he has a body. He has a human body. Right there. And any religious spiritual tradition that tries to show God through a representation, through a form, is bringing out the personal aspect of God through form. Some religious traditions really go to town with that. Hinduism has forms all over the place. I think there are more gods in Hinduism than there are people. So if you can become a Hindu, you can kind of put an offer, say, I'm willing to become a devotee. What's your offer? Because there are probably a million gods to every person, and you could kind of command a market that way if you're willing to become a devotee. On the other hand, you have Islam or Christianity or Judaism that are most emphatic that God has no form. In fact, in Judaism, they wouldn't even have a name for God. I think Yahweh is not actually a name. Doesn't it mean the nameless one or something like that? And in Islam, they do this by refusing to have any representational art. You can't show a form of Allah, even of Muhammad. They wouldn't even permit that. And the reason for it is because it's idolatry. It's creating an idol. It's creating a likeness. And nothing can compare with God. God is absolutely unknowable and transcendent. So here we have the formless aspect of God really emphasized in these religious traditions. On the other hand, another way in which God has a personal modality is through attributes. And now Christianity, Islam, Judaism too, very much affirm a God with attributes who engages in personal relationships with people. Like in Judaism, how would that be so there? Any of you have read the Old Testament? Well, I mean, God is constantly engaged in history, is he not? He establishes a covenant with the Jewish people. You remember when Moses went up to the Mount Sinai and got the 10 Commandments? Remember what his people were doing?
That would be very bad.
Very bad.
Calf.
Made a golden calf, right? So that they could worship it. Okay, they wanted a formful God. They wanted a likeness. And for Yahweh, that was a no-no. You do not do so. So Moses blasted them when he got back down, because God is completely without form. Okay, God is without form, but God is not without attributes, is he? Because he was displeased. He was unhappy, and he told them so. Those are human characteristics, like a parental, no, don't play with those toys, like that. Or else, what did Moses come down with? He came down with 10 commandments. Well, that is speech. That is language communication. That's a very human modality, is it not? It's communication with people. So in Judaism, you certainly have a God who is relatable to, even though the formful aspect of it is completely rejected there. How about in Christianity? How about form and attribute there? Is God formful in Christianity?
Jesus.
Jesus. He's one of the 3 persons. The Trinity has 3 persons, for heaven's sakes. That's the English word. So you don't get much more personal than that. And in terms of communication, okay, you have Gospels. You have all kinds of attributes attributed to God. So you really do have. It seems to me with the Abrahamic religions, it looks to me like God had a big project going on for a couple avatars and a whole bunch of perfect masters of establishing the idea that God is one and that God is transcendental, and that God at the same time making God into someone who has a personal relationship with people, who wants loyalty, who wants love, who wants obedience, who wants all those things. Now I'm just sort of blabbering away, so go ahead and chime in as things occur to you.
How about the musts and where they fit in this, in the personal and impersonal aspect of God? Because you were talking about relational state of, subject-object, and from my readings of the musts, they had very little of that, just absorbed in God, but their personal aspect of God would happen when Baba would show up.
Well, Muhammad was always going after something.
So there's some kind of an object there.
I guess there's different states too, because all the musts were of different qualities.
I would imagine, I'm just being a gross conscious soul, so of course I don't know, but that the musts are just as much in the subject-object mode as we are. It's just that their objects are not gross.
Baba said that they're absorbed in with some internal object that sometimes they get
Stop.
stuck with it.
Mm.
In some ways, they're even more into it because they can't even change. They just stop.
Yeah.
They're just like there's one object or something like that.
Imagine like a little child with candy, you know, try to take it away. No, no! They're actually like that. It's just that their candy is way up on the planes.
Good
Or-
candy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Doesn't cost
On the third
calories.
plane, you really get stuck in that's enchantment there. Candy is really good. And I suppose on the mental planes too, you're experiencing thoughts. You're on the sixth plane, you actually experience God.
Experience.
And there God does become, I guess it's the formless God, I suppose, becomes the object of your consciousness.
Well, they see God in everything and everywhere.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
all they see.
yeah.
The
I
object of
think
their consciousness.
with the mass, there are different mass.
Mhm.
There's a story I actually told about Krishna mass. He obviously relates to God through a personal God, Krishna. Remember that story?
Mhm. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
But once you get God intoxicated, I think for mass they are called like lower Majubiad, even though they are not seventh plane Maju.
It is much
They are
easier.
Majus because they are absorbed, merged into the
Yeah.
experience, which is not necessarily the highest, but on the planets, in the heavens. So in that case, probably object and subject do disappear in a state of intoxication. Don't you
Yeah.
feel?
To some
I
extent.
suppose to an extent, yeah.
No, they're not really aware of gross consciousness.
But how about subtle consciousness? You'd have that. Objects.
So they're aware of, I don't know, they're different from Sadics. Sadics are aware, consciously aware
Well,
of subtle.
yeah, if the
But mass are different.
I would imagine they're aware of the thing they're intoxicated with, but maybe they merge in it, or I don't know.
Yeah, like my Jew.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you become one, how can we know?
So we should need to get a must here.
Sounds like
That's what we have.
Yeah.
But they're so
Getting a must here is a must.
They're so absorbed, they won't know how to tell you.
When they come out of it, we'll ask them.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Or
people
samadhi would be a bit like that too, even for
Yeah, they're
Raja.
basically in the samadhi, but without the ability of a Sadic to come up.
Yeah.
So Baba goes and helps.
But Muhammad was quite talkative. It's an interesting thing
Uh-huh.
Well, I think
But-
Baba,
about different things. I don't know what.
Baba pushed him, Baba helped him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here is something relevant to this, actually. And this is, I could add here, let me show you for, where is it? This idea of the five presences, I'm going to be showing it here, but it actually is inherent in which this chart. I know I don't need to expand it because you all have memorized.
I have it on an Excel sheet.
They want a simpler version than that.
Yeah,
That's Marshall. It's
but
exactly.
in fact, this was done by Lud Dimfold and was approved by Baba in To God Speaks. But the whole right-hand side of it, which is probably the part that a lot of people know the least, you have, I wish I had a laser pointer, I couldn't buy one, as I say, but the first manifestation, the second manifestation, then below this you can see the third manifestation, fourth manifestation, and fifth manifestation, right? You see those? That goes all the way across. And what those are the five presences I was just talking about. So this comes from Dr. Ghani. Lud Dimfold got this from some of Ghani's material. So this idea of the five presences is right here in the supplement to God Speaks and in this chart. So I'm just mentioning, it's not just I mean, it's there in our Baba's stuff also. But here's what those five presences, and the word for presence is, I think it's hadara. It means the modality in which God exhibits himself to us. This would be an Ibn Arabi sort of view where God is the only existence and all that we ever experience is God. So the five presences, the modalities in which God is present to us. Starting from the bottom one, so the gross sphere, the gross plane, in other words, it's actually just God. God is made present to us through manifesting in the gross plane. When you get to be like the musts we were just talking about, it's the subtle sphere, the alam-e-malakut is the Islamic term for it. God present that way. And then the mental sphere, the alam-e-jabarut. Okay, this is all familiar to us. It's these last two where we get to our topic today. God as divinity, possessed of attributes and form, sagun and sakar, right? And then the first is transcendent God without attributes and form, nirgun and nirakar. So there we have it, the impersonal and the personal aspects of God. There we go. There we go, right there. The impersonal and the personal. I know this.
From Jeanette.
Okay, this new technology fails in the end. You have to go back to a nice.
Actually,
can.
I thought it was a shepherd's hook and it was going to yank you out of the stage.
Yeah, I'm going to go grab some of these. Here, if I do it this way, I can just take it for myself. So this comes right out of Ibn Arabi, but I have read articles saying that this fundamental understanding is very widespread through the great perennial traditions of the world. You can find it in, Greek philosophy and in Christianity and in
Well,
Hindu.
doesn't the perfect master Ramakrishna, I remember Eric or someone said that he said the reason they depict Krishna blue, they paint him blue, in India,
Yeah.
And the reason that he's depicted like that, because he's infinite,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Upasni Maharaj said Krishna is painted dark or dark blue because he represents Adi Shakti, or the natural darkness.
Mhm.
In Bhagavad.
Right. Yeah.
Abode, you said that's Islamic language, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Which is
Does that mean that
the
this
natural darkness.
whole thing is in the
Yeah,
Quran?
this is Ramakrishna.
No, it's the Quran is really non-philosophical. It's doesn't use that kind of abstract thinking at all. It's actually, the Quran is very. I mean, we might, from the standpoint of the modern world, find it kind of alien and strange, but they didn't find it that way then. It was a very direct address to the people of the time, and very comprehensible and made a great deal of
So where
sense.
does this come from?
This idea was developed by the perfect master, Ibn Arabi. It's from Ibn Arabi.
He was a Sufi, wasn't
Huh?
he? He was a Sufi.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, he
okay.
was. He died about 1240. Actually, it was his disciples and tradition from him that came up with this idea as such, but it was there inherently in his work. He's died 1240, and he's the super colossus among Sufi philosophers, kind of unmatched.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The second presence, God as divinity, possessed of attributes and form, would you attribute the avatars, prophets, to that category? Do they belong to that?
That would be the manifestation of
Of
the
that.
avatar. Of course, the avatar keeps his root in one also. I would think so. What do you
Yeah.
think?
But Ibn
I
Arabi,
don't know.
Ibn Arabi says that without the existence of the avatar, the universe wouldn't exist.
He's connected with all that.
Yeah.
But I have the second question is, where would you place Ishwar, like Brahm, Vishnu, and
I think
Mahesh, because
Ishwar,
of
you know
his
Ishwar, Tian is referring to Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, you mean like that.
Yeah.
Creator, preserver, destroyer. I'm sure that all of you have memorized infinite intelligence all the way through to the end of the
They have
index.
attributes, but no form.
And
They
it,
have attributes, but no form. Where would you place them?
yeah. Baba calls Ishwar Sagar and Sagun. No, he doesn't. He's Nirakar, isn't he?
But they have attributes.
He's not, Ishwar does not have forms, but Ishwar is the source of all forms. And thus, Ishwar certainly belongs to this stratum of things, because Ishwar is completely unconscious of this. He doesn't know himself as God. It's that aspect of God, wouldn't you agree?
But they have the attributes of creating, preserving, and destroying.
Yeah.
So,
So it's
He
all
rules the
working
show.
with forms. Ishwar, by the way, is the third state of God. That's this state right here. This is the third state of God, which infinite intelligence calls Ishwar. And this is all. This would all be concerned with that second presence, it seems to me, because it's all working with forms and with attributes, and the formless and transcendent. Baba does say that God in this state does not know that he is God. And the reason God doesn't know that he's God is that he's a workaholic. No one else has the right to use the expression 24/7, except for Ishwar in the third state of God. Every instant, Ishwar is completely absorbed in his creation and never takes one instant to look at himself. And thus, doesn't know he's God because he's too busy. It's like, don't bother me. Hey, Ishwar, do you know that you're God? Don't bother me with that. I've got work to do. That's Ishwar. So that seems to me would belong to the tier of that second one. And here is, let's see, where,
If he doesn't know himself as God,
yeah.
who does he know himself as?
so that means
doesn't
you
know.
call Ishwar personal God or impersonal?
I think that's personal God, definitely, because Ishwar is all about relationships with creation. It's the relational mode. He never thinks about himself at all.
Okay.
The thought never comes to him. He's 24/7 working for creation. I mean, I think that really is what a manifestation of God's compassion and mercy. He never takes, I mean, if I know that I'm God, one of the three attributes is bliss, right?
But is he just creating, or is he sustaining and destroying as well?
All of that, all the time. He's
Yeah.
continuously doing that.
Yeah.
And never for one instant turns back to look at himself.
So does he know bliss?
Huh?
Does he know bliss?
I mean, I presume doesn't have the I am God, I am bliss experience, apparently.
Only when God becomes human can we experience that divine bliss. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even God in the
And
building.
Ishwar never does that. That never happens
never
for poor
becomes
Ishwar.
human.
Where,
Maybe
where does his to-do list come from?
Us.
So busy.
He's the left hand of the avatar.
But he does.
He's
But
an
when he
Excel
does
spreadsheet.
have a rest,
It's
which
okay.
that means Mahapralaya. Every
Yeah,
day.
I would think in Mahapralaya, we should find out. Hey Ishwar, Mahapralaya, do you get some I am God time?
So maybe he's really just the mechanism. Barbara's
yeah.
personifying
That's
it just
right.
for
Yeah,
by way of
I
making a
thought
good
he
story.
was the manifesto.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of people bring that up.
Say that again.
Is Ishwar personal or impersonal? You know,
Yeah,
Is
because
he
he doesn't have
simply
any
a
choice.
principle,
He's
or
got
is
no
it-
free will. He just
Yeah,
does
maybe
what
he's
we
a
are.
mechanism.
Yeah.
He's
What we
basically
are.
a law of the jungle.
but on the other hand, Ishwar is the means by which we personally approach God. Has a face, creates, preserves, destroys. Ishwar answers prayers, is the one who answers. Whenever you want something from the world, Ishwar is the one who gives it to you or doesn't.
But he can't help it. He just does what he does. He's
But
not really
Ishwara might
answering.
say, hey, I'm a guy, I got a name. No, this is interesting. See, this is personal and impersonal, right? Applied to Ishwara. And now here's another aspect of the personal and impersonal as it comes up in religions. Some concepts of God or higher powers think of God as kind of an impersonal sort of force. Like the force is with you. Something like that. And that would make God impersonal. But the way in which I'm using impersonal here links it with non-dual, where God is the only existence. And in the impersonal aspect of God, the creation simply, the question does not arise. The I, who am I, does not arise. God simply is. That's our destiny. That's where we're going to be in the end. Even if you're a perfect master, after being a perfect master, you go back to the eighth state of God.
Barbara says God alone is real.
Yeah,
Nothing matters but love for God, so let's both of them
You
join
go both.
together.
that's right. That's right. Both. There's another big Sufi idea. If any of you were at the Sufism sessions last year, we came to this a little bit. There's a lot more to be said about it, but it's the insan. It's actually the Arabic is al-insan al-kamil. The insan means man and kamil means perfect, the perfect man. And this is a idea, again, developed by the great Ibn Arabi. You know, in Islam, Muhammad most emphatically denied being God. Or maybe I shouldn't quite say that, but he was the Rasul, the prophet, the messenger of God, and would not allow attribution of Godhood to himself ever to happen. And in Islam, that's quite an orthodoxy. I think in Saudi Arabia, they don't allow the celebration of Muhammad's birthday, lest there might be any confusion on points like this. Okay. Nonetheless, there arose an idea of the Insan Kamil that starts to be looking an awful lot like the 10th state of God, the avatar of the perfect master. And you can see it here. These five are actually, they're described in language that may not always, okay, I'll look. These are the five presences, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 is the gross world. 4 is the subtle world. 3 is the non-composite, the world of spirits. We could call that the mental sphere, the alami jabarut. The fourth, negation from outward existence, and 1 is complete negation of entities. Okay, in Islam, they have just differentiate, but what's called the essence of God and the attributes of God. And the essence, the al-dat, is the Arabic for it. The essence of God is completely unknowable and unimaginable. It's that what we've been talking about, that impersonal, transcendent aspect of God. Islam did not have a non-dual idea of God. God and creation are separate. But God cannot be known and cannot be understood. And it's a mistake to try. You will only fall into error by trying to understand the essence of God. So that would be up on this level here, the top one. But God, this is not, I'm Ibn Arabiing it here. God manifests, makes himself known, and actually gives existence to the creation through the names or the attributes. You know, there are the 99 names of God, the merciful, and so forth. Through those names and the level of the divinity, God can become known to creatures. So the names of God are the personal aspect within this idea. So the essence is impersonal, it's unknowable. And the names of God or the attributes of God are the medium for the flow of the personal relationship. So Islam definitely affirms the personal, even though God is formless. If you attribute a form to God, you're in trouble. They don't like that. But the attributes, it certainly does affirm. And there is a huge debate within Islam as to the status of the attributes. Are they the same as God? Are they different from God? That was quite a debate that went on for a long time. So,
Don't they
yeah.
place a lot of emphasis on the Quran?
Mm.
You know, they're like, everything is, I seem to, is that right?
What's this about?
The Quran, they place a lot of emphasis on the book.
No doubt about it.
Mm.
Even though the Quran does not use this kind of philosophical language,
Yeah.
but people like Ibn Arabi constantly root what they say in the Quran because they feel it's the plenitude of all truth and knowledge and manifest. They said the Quran was eternal. It manifested in human language at a particular time, but the Quran itself is eternal. That's the general. There are counter opinions, but that's the general view. But think about this now. Say the Quran, or let's say the Gospels, or let's say God speaks. These are language, right? So that is a modality, a personal modality between God and us, is it not?
Because Ibn Arabi said that the names of God, which appear a lot in the Quran, are the attributes, but then all the other named things in creation are like secondary namings that have come through the initial divine names, and so the whole creation is named.
Yeah.
That's how it exists.
Yeah, it's through the channel of the name that God imparts being to his creatures. We don't actually exist in and of ourselves. God loans it through the medium of the names and the attributes in this worldview.
How many of Muslims would understand Ibn Arabi?
One.
Or follow it, embrace it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, he's very difficult, but he's had huge
Carl Ernst,
influence.
there you go.
Who?
Carl Ernst.
Carl Ernst.
Carl, yeah, he was.
His son-in-law was his leading disciple, Kunawi. He probably did. Actually, the influence of Ibn Arabi has been enormous, but he's exceedingly difficult. So I think for everyone, it's always a hard thing. But some of these ideas have been widely absorbed. So this idea of the insan kamil, for example, is a very pervasive one in Islam. And it's on the edge of trouble. You know, it never was quite heretical, but a lot of people sort of said, whoa, I don't know about this. A lot of people felt that.
Maybe as many as many of our lovers who understand God's speech.
So I mean, I can understand probably this word, embrace it. I mean, we all embrace God's space.
A lot.
A lot would embrace
A lot, and a lot would be skeptical. You know, there was a, actually in, I have it, this is a slide on this, where is it?
Are the Muslims or Sufis who embrace Ibn Arabi?
Well, you know, I wouldn't even differentiate. Maybe nowadays Sufis are repudiated by a lot of the mainstream Islam, but over most of history, it's not like there was a division. A lot of times the Sufi orders were were pillars of their societies, and they weren't in general in a relationship of hostility. I would say most Sufi orders stayed away from the political in that way, but I don't think they were oppositional. But now this is going to be right in God Speaks, where we have, I'll just mention it and not try to go into it, but Wujudiya, or what, this would be Ibn Arabi, and Shuhudiya, this is actually quite a conflict on I'll just say this, matters relating to what we're talking to. So there was a lot of controversy about this within Islam itself. But nonetheless, Ibn Arabi's view has really spread, especially through Persia and India. He came from Spain, it didn't spread there. It's good he beat it out of Spain, actually. But now here we've seen the 5 presences, right? Well, there's the perfect man right here, the insan kamil, who is the link between all of them. Because it's actually through the medium of the insan kamil that all of it's the isthmus, what the Barzak means an isthmus, you know that word isthmus. An isthmus is a point of land that both connects 2 bodies of water and separates them at the same time. The isthmus is the link between bodies of water on both sides, and at the same time is the separation between them. That word Barzak is what it means. The perfect man actually keeps the link with all these different spheres. Now this is really starting to sound like the Avatar, isn't it? So it's actually the human being, or the human form. It has the insan kamil is a human, is a person. So in this idea, the connection of all of these is achieved through the human form. Now I think this gets right close to, fits in very well with Baba's account of things. I could show you a bunch of charts from, I wish we had them right here, from Baba's various books, where you'll see the perfect master or the avatar in that same role as the point of connection with all these different spheres of reality, with all these different presences, and is in fact the only one. Without the perfect master, or the 10th state of God, let's say, or the avatar, these are disconnected from each other. There's no link between them. So in this sense, this is a very strong affirmation of the personal, the person of the avatar, the person of the perfect master, is the means by which the link can be established. So the personal, I mean, I said before that the impersonal is actually the highest level of truth, and that might lead you to think, well, the impersonal is really for the real seekers of God, and the personal is just for the flunkies who can't do that. Well, that's actually not true, because the perfect man is the supremely personal and is the means by which these are all connected and all linked. So
and even, I mean, even today, many people will die atrocious deaths today on this very question, because the Wahhabis, with whom President Trump's allied himself, of course, don't believe that God can take form in a perfect human being. So whether it's a Sufi saint or treating Muhammad as a God-man in any way, worshipping Muhammad, it's seen as idolatry, and therefore has to be extirpated as thoroughly as possible. And that's what's driving them on in Syria and everywhere else. At the moment, this very question that they believe God can't take form in a man in this way. And whereas the Shiites on the whole, and certainly the Sufi orders, believe in perfect saints and the perfect man.
So they believe in God, but they don't believe he can take form as a man. So they don't think he's very powerful then, apparently. Because they don't think he can
the
take
prophet,
form.
yeah, no, but in Islam, the prophet, although the prophet is not the God-man, plays an exalted role. There's no question about that. But they don't believe that any human being can be God. That's idolatry.
So God is not in us.
But God
He
is.
God, it depends on your philosophical school. God might be in us. Now, to Ibn Arabi, he got awful close to the line there. And he would say that God is actually our very being and existence. But it's actually God's existence, not ours, that lends its existence to us. And that would not be that uncommon in Al-Ghazali would hold to a view not dissimilar. A lot of the great Islamic philosophers would impute all existence to God. Not all of them would. Some of them would say that there are two actual different existences. They are essences. There's the God's essence and the creation's essence, and they're separate from each other. So it's a bit of a vexed issue, but where basically no Muslims would go to, unless you were al-Halaj on your way to getting crucified, is to say, I am God.
So Baba's really laid it out.
Yeah.
The fact that there are perfect masters, and then there's, the avatar.
You mean
So
Baba
it's
did
a
this?
very detailed description that he has given, isn't it?
You mean Baba?
Baba, yeah.
Baba clarified this so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
None of the Abrahamic religions can actually go to the place of I am God, because the soul and the oversoul, the Atman and the Brahman in Vedanta terms, are not one and the same. And ultimately, I'd have to say that God is to blame for this, because none of the avatars or prophets were willing to cross that line. The only one who did to a limited extent was Jesus, and that was in his own case, where he is the Son of God. But everybody else is separate from God. So this idea of this is dualism versus non-dualism, Dvaita versus Advaita. None of the Abrahamic religions would cross the line to becoming Advaitic. Really, it's only Vedanta that would do that.
So the
But-
only avatar that said he was God was Meher Baba. Is that what you're saying here?
No, I would say Jesus got. Would
Well,
you
he
say
said
that
it
he
was
said
the
I'm?
Son of God.
Yeah, and
That was
I am
his
the
out,
Father of one.
but they crucified him anyway.
and he said, I and the Father are one.
No, but the other Indian avatars were okay with it. Krishna,
Krishna.
Rama, and
Oh,
In-
okay, for them it was okay for them? It wasn't,
Yeah, no, India is a very different deal.
oh, so it depends on where they were from.
Well, the
Abrahamic.
religion.
The Abrahamic
Oh, okay.
religions.
In fact, we could talk a little bit about some of these different religions. I had that as a part of this whole thing.
Christian mysticism is quite accepted. There's a famous saying, I can't remember, maybe Valentinus or something, a Gnostic. He said, God became man, so man could become God, when he talks about Christ. So amongst mystics, it's kind of accepted.
Well, they'll get, you approach it, and the idea of union is a goal in mysticism. But among Christians, I can't think of anyone who would actually say, I have achieved union with God. They wouldn't, maybe in death, in the afterlife, you could do it.
What about
How about the Gnostics? Christian Gnostics.
in the opening paragraph of the Dark Night of the Soul, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He said, I need to point out that I'm someone who's achieved the goal of this journey.
Did he say that?
Something
Yeah, the Valentina school, Gnostics, is all about that.
Yeah, well, it's pretty, at the most, it's very, very rare. And it would be, in general, quite heretical to make the I am God claim in a Christian
Well, when they
context.
talk about the Holy Ghost, it's very much the Atman within each soul, isn't it?
Well, the Holy Ghost, but even for me to merge fully with that. With people like Meister Eckhart, again, you're getting very close. But I don't think Christians would be breaking a barrier, I would say.
What's the origin of Vedantism? Who was the...
Yeah. Okay, Vedanta would be the philosophical religious school that most made the affirmation that the Atman is the Brahman. Atman is the soul, and Brahman is the word for the supreme reality.
The avatar or the perfect master who kind of started that?
Oh, where did
yeah.
it start?
Yeah.
There wasn't clearly an avatar at the, I mean, it originated, and this is a whole big topic in itself, but the root of it is what's called the Upanishads, particularly Barhadaranyaka Upanishad and Chandogya Upanishad and several others that seem to date from something like 800 to 300 BC. And who authored them we don't know, and there isn't any avatar from that period except Buddha, who was emphatically not that. Definitely not. And they presented themselves as interpreters of the Vedas, which were before that, but the Vedas don't say these things. But in there you get the intimations of the idea that the soul and God are one and the same. And this got developed over the next 1,000 years by various people. Gaudapada is a great figure, and Shankara is the greatest of that group, who lived maybe 700 or so, no one's quite sure, maybe 800, who really developed this idea that the soul and God are one and the same. And that really is the foundation of Meher Baba's darshana also. That is to say that God alone is real, and every drop is actually identical with the ocean. And it seems to me this strain of Vedanta, which is called Advaita Vedanta. Ad means means not, and Dvait means two. Non-dual Vedanta is the great philosophical religious tradition, more than any other, that has said this, that only God exists and that everything is ultimately identical with God. And even within Vedanta, I mentioned this earlier, there's another school of it that emerged after several centuries. It's called Vishishtadvaita, qualified non-dualism. And then there was a Dvaita Vedanta, dualistic Vedanta. And these, Vishishtadvaita is most associated with a great figure, Ramanujam is his name, who attacked Shankara and said, no, we're not one and the same with God. And what this does is it created scope for love for God. And that was a problem that they found in non-dual Vedanta, that they are so absorbed in being God that how can you love God if you already are God? You know. Now, I mean, there's a lot more that can be said about this. But this question comes up with Baba too. I think Baba accommodates both of them very well.
Yeah.
But you can see that on the face of it, if you're all absorbed in being God all the time, it doesn't give much scope. I want a you. I want a beloved. I want someone who's not me, who I can adore and love. This is the personal side. Personal aspect of God likes a dual setting better.
Well, doesn't Baba make that statement? Now is the time for all to understand that I am God in human form.
Yeah.
That's a pretty heavy, full-on statement.
Yeah,
He is God in human form. You know?
Yeah.
Like it's a...
And Baba also said, I and you are not we but one,
Yeah.
which affirms that ultimately we are one and the same with Him. But let me ask you this, like in terms of dualism and non-dualism, or personal and impersonal sides of God with Meher Baba. Let's suppose Baba said, Daniel, I'd like you to go down to Maroochydore today and buy, what sort of thing might you buy in Maroochydore?
Fastenings for the workshop.
Okay, fastenings for the workshop. go down this afternoon and buy fasting, and you were to say, well, Baba, I know that you're saying so as God, right? But I'm God too, and I don't feel like doing that. How do you think that would go over?
The workshop wouldn't get built.
And let's suppose you had been one of Baba's mandali for the last 5 years. How do you think Baba might respond on the Vajifdar model? Somebody was telling me about an instance where Padre had neglected to put a cap on a cup of water when Baba had told him to do that, and he just forgot one meal, and Baba jumped up and grabbed him by the throat. You know. So I dare say it would not meet with his pleasure. So, but now isn't Baba being a hypocrite? Because aren't you God? He said so. Aren't you a drop that's one with the ocean? So why is this big shot drop, Meher Baba, asserting his priority over you as another drop of his ocean? Because in actual relationship terms with Meher Baba, he acted as if that was not true, as if he was the Lord and I am the creature separate from him, and I am. So there's a dualistic assumption of the actual relationship between his lovers and himself.
Consciousness. Different consciousness.
Yeah. So his actual relational modality was dual. It was not non-dual. Isn't that true?
And
he
has transcended the duality, hasn't he?
Yes. And we would do that in the understanding that he has transcended the duality and we have not. And by engaging in this modality of relationship with him, in the end, he will bring us to his non-dual state. So it's sort of like we accept the non-dual and the impersonal transcendent state as the reality. We recognize that we have not achieved that, and in that understanding, we operate in a dual mode, a dualistic mode and personal mode, where he is the Lord and I am not the Lord, I am the creature, right? Isn't that true? So it seems to me that Baba actually has both of these in functional terms. And I don't see the problem with this, frankly. I mean, I accept, all right, I am God in human form because Baba tells me so. I believe it to be so, right?
I think Baba also made it very clear that we are not one with God, not by division, but by impression. And still with God. Because we are impression consciousness. We are impression God. Well, Meher Baba is impressionist.
Right.
So that I feel Baba sanskaras, in other words.
Yeah,
That's
that
the
is,
key.
so we're not actually divided from God. We
Not
just,
by division, but by impression.
by sanskaras. Yeah, by the way, that's right in the message from Baba in Stay with God. He says that. That very statement is right there. So this seems to me to be that, in this way, Baba gets both of them, doesn't he? The personal and the impersonal, the dual and the non-dual. We actually operate in a dualistic mode, and our immediate relationship with Meher Baba, if he's here in the person, is personal, right? But the ultimate truth is non-dual and impersonal. Sorry.
I have a question. You know, in the Beloved God's prayer,
Yeah.
Baba tells us to pray to Beloved God rather than Baba. Why do you think is that? Beloved God, help us all to love you more, not Baba.
Yeah, I know. I don't
Is it that he created the prayer and then he partook in the prayer? So instead of praying to the personal aspect of himself, he is praying to God.
And what do you guys think? Why,
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
why Baba?
I never
make us
thought
say
about that.
Beloved God?
Instead of beloved Baba, help us all to
Yes.
love you more.
Yeah. And also help us all to hold fast to Baba's Dharma
Dharma.
until the very end.
Yeah.
Then why is that?
I
Well,
think it's,
he's speaking, that prayer is speaking to God, not to
Yeah,
Baba,
of course, that's all.
stating the obvious.
Well, the other one.
But then say.
But why?
Come on, why?
But
Baba's
why?
talking,
But he's
we're,
impersonal.
Why is it not to the
We're all
personal
talking to-
aspect
Yes.
of God embodied
Why
in Avatar Meher
impersonal?
Baba?
Maybe in an effort for us
Because
to
we are all God.
Well, what do you
I think we're talking, that prayer is talking to all of creation. Everything that is God, including Mayor Baba and all of it.
Well, that's good, I like that.
Patra, what were you going to say?
I'm just saying that maybe in an effort for us to go beyond our non-dual thinking about God, when we pray to Baba, we are doing that relationally with him as a person.
Yeah.
But when we pray to God, beloved God, we move beyond our relationship with him as a person.
That could be. You know, it does seem that historically, a God sees fit at different times to radically challenge the personalization of God. Like Muhammad did that, definitely did it. The Jewish tradition wouldn't. And perhaps the reason is because people personalize so much that they concretize and reify God. They too much associate God with a particular form or a particular person or a particular thing. And you know, Muhammad, when he conquered the Kaaba, you know the Kaaba, which was surrounded with statues in those days, because people, it was a big commercial proposition for the elite of Makkah. People would come there in pilgrimage and they'd make a lot of money. So they had all these different idols because they wanted to expand the market as much as possible. Muhammad smashed them all. There's a case. So that is a move in the Avatar's set, in his toolbox. He does do that sometimes. Baba didn't.
Well, he also covered the Madonna.
Yeah.
Well, recently I was thinking about this beloved God prayer.
Yeah.
I'm just offering my own understanding. I feel the final union is with the impersonal God. That's why Baba tells us to pray to the impersonal God. Mayor Baba is the boat. Mayor Baba is the upaya, the means for us.
Do you know the word upaya? By the way, we haven't come to Buddhism. It's useful means. Useful means. It's something which is ultimately not true, but which is useful in achieving the truth. Yeah.
Because in the prayer, Baba said, till we become worthy of union with you, with God, the impersonal. So our final union is not with Mayor Baba as a person,
with God.
but it's with God.
That's so good. Jeanette, you've been wanting to say something for a while.
Just in case it's germane to the discussion, but I heard, and I'm trying to think of who the person was, just in the last couple of years, that prayer, and you probably go to correct this if it's a misconception, but that prayer was originally given by Baba to the Mandali. You've heard that too? Yeah. So I don't know if that has an impact on the answer to that question.
Maybe the Mandali only alone are worthy of union.
No, we knew it was going to go out to all of us.
Yeah, David.
But it's, in that prayer, it's asking the impersonal God to help us all to hold fast Father's Dharma until we become.
Till we become worthy of union with you, help us all to hold fast to Baba's Dharma until the very end.
Till the very end.
Till the very end.
Which to me speaks to, Baba talks about always remember me, always think of me, repeat my name, repeat my name. Well, that's the personal aspect of Baba, to repeat my name. But then he also states, but remember, I am not this body.
Right.
I am not this body. And so we get confused. We get confused between the name, which supersedes and goes way beyond the body, and we get attached to the form, that which is not there now. So what we do is help us all to hold fast to Baba's Dhamma. Well, what is that asking? That's asking for that loving, divine presence, bringing that divine presence into our life through the repeating of His name.
Yeah, look at the word Daman. That's a very personal figure on the sit. And Baba, I never remember where Baba actually tried to explain what his daman was.
It's the hem of his sod.
You know, I mean, they would all have understood that, the hem of his garment. But I mean, try to hold fast to your daman. Okay, Baba, well, I'm getting on the next plane because I got to hold on to your daman. And man, you know, if you take it literalistically, it's like the Quran saying God's hands and God's feet. Obviously, we have to interpret it in some non-literalistic way. And Baba never attempted
He did.
to explain that.
Baba said somewhere, I think there's a quote in the Mandalay Hall, is holding on to my dharma is a baby.
Yeah.
It's to obey, obedience to me.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we
that's-
have to give some non-literal interpretation to that.
Yeah,
Would
it's
you-
right in the reception room.
Ah,
The
okay.
quote is right there.
Oh, good.
Here,
Holding on to my daman has most meaning.
Yeah.
Most
another place he said means obedience,
Mhm.
holding on to my dharma.
Yeah. But would you agree with me that Baba affirms the personal, but always finds ways of radically challenging the personal also?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever personal conception of him one forms, which he encourages us to do, the time comes where he flips us.
Yeah, because he says, love me, not who you think I am.
Right.
So that immediately
Yeah.
negates whatever conception of Baba that you currently have.
Yeah.
And he also says, to each one I appear, as he...
He thinks
Right.
I am.
Yeah.
So we
And-
take him to be what, and he sort of smiles and acts like that, but it's not going to last. He's going to subvert that. He's going to challenge it. So there's no successful strategy with him. We're in a wrestling match with a guy who knows all the tricks. So there's always the personal, and the radical subversion of the personal has to be there. Because we have to go.
Yeah.
We have to be annihilated. Yeah, Paul?
I just want to put something out there. His silence is kind of like almost an attribute of not having attributes, if you know what I mean.
I very much
Even
agree. Yeah.
that in itself is kind of speaking to that.
Yeah, so look at the Quran. They took the Quran to be the eternal speech of Allah, the generally orthodox view. The Gospels were written down, 30 to 80 years after Jesus, but a lot of the same thing was attributed to them. Okay, so we might want to put God speaks into the same category. God speaks, right? And look who wrote it. The guy who was silent, who never spoke at all.
But then he did say the only thing worth getting is in silence. So then he flips it back again.
Right.
It's just there's no ground to stand on.
So there's a case of it. There's a personal modality. By the way, God, 7 attributes of Allah. He's powerful, knowing, willing, living, seeing, hearing, and speaking. These are all modalities through which we can relate to him. Okay. So in the case of Baba, he's speaking. God speaks. We can read him. We can understand him. This applies to all of his messages. And then it turns out he never said one single word. Or he said he was going to say a word. Right? So you could say, one could say, well, Baba never wrote God's. Baba didn't. It's not from him. Erich came up with it. Erich put words to it. So there's another case of the personal modality of speech being offered to us and then pulled away.
And then his ultimate act of dropping the body.
Mm-hmm.
That which was the personal form, and it was time to go inside and create those internal links, which he had been doing with his Mandalayan disciples and all those who had been following him, and to go deep in there.
Yeah.
But the real word, the word that can be spoken of is not the real word. Baba has to use.
It's not beginning of the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah, not just Tao Te Ching.
But that isn't the very beginning. The
Yeah,
Tao
yeah,
that can be is not the
exactly,
eternal Tao. The
yeah,
word,
yeah.
the name that can be named is not the
Yeah.
eternal name.
And also people like Kabir, Nanak, you also see the real name cannot be named.
Yeah.
The real word. So, yeah.
It seems to me that it's very difficult for people to believe in the personal God because of this vastness of the universe that we realise now, space and time, and how can a limited human being be the personal God? And it's very difficult to talk to people about Baba being God. But the basic factor is that in our culture, most people have lost all faith that personal God can be found within themselves, that the absolute is there at the deepest level of their own experience. Because once that is accepted, then it becomes plausible for Jesus or Baba to be God in person without sanskaras, without obscurities, without sin or whatever. Then it becomes, but there's a blindness around at the moment about that inner, deepest connection that we all have with the absolute within us.
For me, I even didn't believe in the inner absolute within till I read Baba's life. When Baba lived such a life, I realized there was truth, personified. Then, from Baba's words and writing and the mentalist life, gradually I feel that there's God within. So it worked for me the other way around.
Yeah.
You know, this is I put this up here, and I won't take the time to read it, but in the Mayor Message in 1929, and then right below this is another passage from God Speaks, where Baba says the same thing. And in it, he says that the only form in existence is the human form. And I have never seen that said before Baba did. We do have things that it links in with, like in the Bible, man is made in the image of God. And in the perfect man in Sane Kamal, Ibn Arabi uses the image of a mirror, a mirroring of God. You have a lot of that idea. But to radicalize it to the point where the only form in existence is the human form, that's quite an idea that Baba has given us. As I say, it's in 1929, and God Speaks. It clearly,
Everything else is proto-human.
Proto-human. It's not fully unfolded yet. He gives the example of a stone is like a rag doll, all folded up. And Baba explained this to the Mir Ashram boys, by the way, which will be a topic of a Saturday session a few weeks from now. He actually had a little doll, and he illustrated evolution by doing things with this doll. Now, it occurs to me that the avatar is God descending into human form. And if the human form is all that exists, that would give another light on what the avatar is. The avatar is actually inhabiting, proactively descending into that form which is the only existent form. Everything is that. So in a sense, you could say the impersonal approach to God is a recognition of that transcendent self at the root of it all, which you were just picking up actually. That God is at the core of me, that God is the root of me, that God is the self with a capital S of me. But the avatar is actually not just that, but is the entire formality, the human formality too. So in a way, the personal approach approaches that God informed. God is the divine human form, which is the form of all of us. And the impersonal is recognizing the transcendental root of the whole thing.
Like, didn't you say somewhere like that the form is like a doorway through to the infinite, you know?
The end is impersonal and non-dual. That's the end of the journey.
If God is in everything, is Baba exclusively in the human form? Didn't Baba also say I'm a sparrow for a sparrow?
Well, those are all the human form too,
Yeah,
just not fully unfolded.
They're
So,
latent.
yeah, sort of halfway unpacked, you know, like that. Now in 2 weeks, next week, you know, we won't be having this session, but 2 weeks we'll be dealing with Buddhism, and I just want to say about Buddhism on this question, which is interesting. Ostensibly, it is the most non-personal, I'm talking about early Buddhism, as it came out of the Buddha himself, as best we know, is the most non-impersonal approach there could be. Because Buddha repudiated the existence of the self, the false self. There is no Atma, there is no soul. And he also would never affirm the existence of God. So we're talking about a personal relationship with God. Well, there's no person and there's no God.
He didn't deny it either, though.
Huh?
He didn't deny it either. He didn't. He,
God, you mean?
yeah.
He
Buddha didn't deny it.
quite deny it.
He
He just
didn't-
wouldn't affirm it.
But there was a personal relationship between Buddha and his early disciples.
That's the
Very
thing. So the personal does get recapitulated nonetheless. And here's an interesting, so there are different methods, like Muhammad would never affirm that God could become man. And yet, he himself was such an overwhelming presence in Islam that you might say, in the imagination of Muslims, that was answered. And in the same way with Buddha, although he would never say he was God, the stories of him and the image of him was so powerful, in effect, to supply Buddhism with a personalized aspect of God, even though they would not call it that. And an interesting thing is that the early centuries of Buddhism, they never had statues of him. But starting, what was it, about 100 AD or something like that, they started to have statues.
400 years, apparently.
Yeah.
They had the wheel and the footprints
Right.
and the tree.
Right.
And then Kumaraswamy said it was 400 years before they started depicting Buddha in the form, the human form.
Right. And when they did, look at the overwhelming impact that it had. I mean, man, if I got an image of Buddha.
Yeah.
So that personalized aspect of the avatar didn't die at all.
No.
Even though he never presented himself in those terms.
Yeah.
I don't think they really wrote a full comprehensive life of Buddha for several centuries also. But in the end, nonetheless, the personalized came through, even though it didn't quite win a place in Buddhist philosophy in the same. So I think these needs always get addressed, if not through the front door, through the back door, one way or another. They have to, because we as people need a person.
Yeah.
We have to have it by God.
There wouldn't be Buddhism without Buddha, and you know, Christianity without Jesus. You know, so there's always that figure.
So by the time of the Lotus Sutra, you've got Buddha and a whole slew of bodhisattvas who sure as heck are looking like deities.
Yeah.
I mean, Indra and the Vedic gods have got nothing on this pack of Buddhas, you know.
As if in the book, the notion of the Buddha nature came up.
Yes, and then you're starting to get something that starts to look like the Atma to me.
Yeah. Well,
Although
particularly Tibetan Buddhism, they really got into it then, didn't they? You know.
But it seems to go in both directions. If it's too personal, the impersonal sneaks in. If it's too impersonal,
Right.
It's sort of like no one, you can't be contained. They both have to. They'll both work their way in no matter what. They're sort of the seed of each other in a way.
God is always going to overturn the cart, no matter what it is. Because after a period of time, our conceptions are false. They always are false. But at a certain time, he's got to change it all.
We are very fortunate because Baba gave us both.
Yeah.
You know, totally balanced.
Yeah, I think Baba really has balanced the two. He's given us both 100%.
Yeah.
Really.
So we can go ahead now and throw it out of balance.
That's right. Well, you know, if we really love Baba, we're going to screw it up twice as fast and compel him to come back. I think we can be such bad Baba lovers, we can bring him back in 350 years. We're right on track.
Yeah, I think we already are.
Yeah, this will be his first stop.
That's right. 350, too long, man. 200, they're not going to last that long.
How to get that wicked
That's right. Well, I always remember when I was a professor, the adage that I've tried to live by: the good teacher carefully waters the spark of young intellect. You know? So we can take the wick of righteousness and water it. Okay, well, thanks, everybody.
Very good. Thank you, Ward.
And remember, Sunday we have a thing at 10 o'clock for anyone interested in that.